Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing on Friday, the 20th of October. Myself and Chris Jack here to look ahead to today's press conference, to look ahead to Philippe Clement's debut in the dugout at Ibrox tomorrow as Hibs come to play Rangers in the Scottish Premiership after the international break. Today, we're going to talk a bit about what team Philippe Clement might pick tomorrow. We'll go through kind of line by line and have some predictions about that. So do get in your predicted team in the comments as well with some justification behind it. And we'll read some of those out throughout the show as well. But before we get into it, a reminder, MPH Group, the morning briefing is brought to you by them, Scotland's award-winning, family-run all-trade specialist covering all of mainland Scotland. And remember, as we've told you every day, you can win a free holiday to Mexico if you use one of their services. All the links are in the description. Right, Chris, be a big build-up to this game at home to Hibs tomorrow. As Stevie pointed out earlier this week, it was also Hibs for Michael Beale's first game in charge around this time last year, coincidentally, after I think it was an international break as well. He's not had too long on the training pitch, Philippe Clement, although his announcement video on his social channels yesterday allowed him to look like he meant business. I guess, firstly, how much can we expect to change when he's had 5 days, to work with this group? And regardless of that, people are going to go there and want to be entertained and expect a 4-0 victory, aren't they, anyway? So it doesn't really matter, does it?
No, people are going to go there, but as you say, Josh, huge expectations of Rangers playing a very different brand of football and rolling Hibs over. I don't think it will happen straight away. But I think we do need to see something from the manager. I know he's only had a couple of days on the training ground. It's not a lot of time to put your ideas across and really get into his style of play and his beliefs. But I think there's be enough time there. There's players coming back from injury, hopefully, which I'm sure we'll come on to. So I think there's enough there to give Rangers fans a bit more optimism, because we've been going to Ibrox the last few weeks. Not really knowing what to expect, but probably fearing the worst, and a number of those games lived up to very low expectations. So, actually looking forward to going tomorrow. I think there's an air of like freshness and an air of expectation around about the support again. So hopefully Rangers can deliver, because we know if they don't, then the title race is over after Phil Clement's first 90 minutes. So there's plenty riding on this one on Saturday.
Yeah, no pressure, Phil. Matt, we are getting in touch as well to say, funnily enough, Gio was unveiled the day after a cup semi-final defeat against Hibs. So there's a commonality. I remember that game at Hampdenwell, and that was not a good afternoon for Rangers, to say the least. But I think you're right, Chris. I mean, I think there's a good dose of optimism going into the game tomorrow. I think less so than the last couple of years, purely because Rangers are kind of here again, and trusting that another manager is going to be the one to get you back where you want to go to. I think for supporters might take them a little bit of time, but I guess before we get into the specifics of who's going to play and what position, obviously the press conference will give us the injury updates. Will Todd Cantwell be back? And we said on social media earlier this week that he might be. How is Jose Cifuentes? Can Danilo play? He's been back in training. How far away are others? So we'll get to all that, but how much do you think, Chris, can change? Because I think a new manager lift is quite cliche, but it's quite true when a new manager comes into a club. I don't think Clement he's had 5 days, and he's also only had, 2 of those with players coming back from international duty as well. So it's not as if he's had even a week of training on the pitch and with everyone ready to kind of go and learn his play style. I don't think you could do that, as he said earlier in the week. I think it was to Sky. I don't think you could do that in 5 days anyway. But what can we expect to see different? Is there, for example, we know that he might adapt his formation to what players he has available. So how much do you think is going to change? And I think what an important thing to recognise is here, although Clement says, look, we're going to start with a blank slate, all the players here, and I think he's been truthful when he says that, because of the type of character he is, but he'll also be aware of what's going to help him, surely. What small decisions, what player decisions, what tactical decisions are going to help him to win favourite tomorrow at Ibrox as well, you'd imagine.
I think the big thing I think you might see is just a bit more tempo about the team. Now, the manager outlined his presser on Tuesday about playing this dominant style, about playing this attacking style that's going to go and take the game to teams, and that's the style of football that Rangers fans expect. Certainly domestically, there's no reason why Rangers shouldn't be almost blowing teams away. Hibs maybe slightly different as one of the better teams in in the division, but you're still expecting Hibs to come to Ibrox and been for a long afternoon and spend long spells on the back foot with a Rangers side that are relentless. I think we need to see more of that from this side, because over the last few months it's been a bit boring. has to be said. It's not been good to watch, and I think we need to see a bit more tempo about them. Certainly a bit more of an attacking threat. I'd like to see Rangers move the ball quicker, get forward quicker. That's not to say you give it to Gordon Golds and tell him to shell long balls towards Dessers. That's not what we're expecting to see. But I think a bit more tempo from Rangers would be good. Hopefully a bit more confidence in some of the players as well. I think there's a number of them that do look a bit down in the dumps at present. I think Dessers certainly falls into that category. Now we can all debate whether he's good enough, where he's actually got the quality, but he's certainly not got the confidence right now. And there's probably a number of them who are just a bit out of sorts. So I don't think we'll see too much in terms of a whole new style and a whole new blueprint of playing. But I think if we can just see a bit the players looking a bit more like themselves and looking a bit more up for it, I think that would certainly be a start. Results in the next couple of weeks are obviously hugely important, because they need to just go on this run, try and build a bit of momentum, try and get the fans back on side once again. And I think if the results can come, it then buys the manager a bit more time to be a bit more to think he drip feed that style of play in over. I think between now and the time you get to the end of the year, we're certainly going to want to see what a Philippe Clement Rangers side looks like and feels like.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got some comments here about what we should expect tomorrow. Dave's dog saying, not sure what team we will see, but I'd love to see young players implemented this season, boys getting 20 minutes at the end and building up 30, 45 minutes. That's something that Clement obviously spoke about. His press conference, he raised himself on his own volition that he likes to work with and bring through young players into the team. And I think his track record shows as much. Neil saying, I bet he'll play players in their positions if he has the players available to do that, even if that means just using the youth, which obviously we saw against St Mirren in the final day before the international break. Aldo saying, I'm not expecting the finished article by any means, but at the very least, what I expect to see is more intensity and more desire from the players. And just finally here as well, another comment saying, honestly, I'll just take the 3 points. Anything else, clean sheet performance, etc., will be a bonus. Right, Chris, I want to move through the team, defence, midfield, attack, and we're going to speak about some individuals, which we've not done that much this week, whether they'll play tomorrow, but I guess more generally, how they'll be used under Philippe Clement, who might benefit from a managerial change, who has more to give, which I think probably translates to a lot of the team. Through the course of this season so far. We don't need to speak about the goalkeeper. It's obvious who's going to play. Jack Butland, the kind of standout summer signing for Rangers so far this season. Be interesting to see if his role changes at all. Does he play slightly higher up in possession, for example? But I don't think there's going to be too much to discuss in the early stages, at least, although I'd like that. Back four, Chris, I don't think that Clement needs to get this line right between making big decisions, even if people are all starting with a clean slate, but also getting that short-term bounce. I think what you might see, here's the back four I'd want domestically. I'd want Tavernier, Goldson, Davies, and Ridvan. I think the alternative options, I think Suter is more comfortable on the right-hand side, even if he's played well on the left-hand side of points and has a lot of really good qualities as a defender. I think Barisic has an excellent final ball, but as we've discussed multiple times, I think in possession, he can limit you, whereas I think Ridvan, and you saw it, I think it was the Livingston game at home, was a perfect example. So sorry to repeat a point if I am, but he gives you different options, Ridvan, and I think when you're breaking down a defence, you need that all over. At fullback, no less at fullback. He can play in the last line and get behind. Yes, his final ball maybe isn't quite as good, but I think that tendency to commit players by dribbling more, and Michael Beale actually spoke about this just before he left. He said the different types of players and the way that Barisic will try to create with the cross and Ridvan will try to effectively carry the ball. But it's not only the fact that he gives you that individually. Rangers have been very lopsided on the right, I think, intentionally this season. I think if you play Ridvan there with maybe a Cantwell on that, maybe he's at number 10, but he moves to the left at points as well, then it suddenly gives you more options. And if you're a defending team, not only are you always facing crosses on that side, but at points it might be someone dribbling at the byline against you. At some points you might have a fullback running on the inside. At some points it might be Sima making a run behind, which I think has been really dangerous at points so far this season. So if I was to pick, that's the back four I'd choose, because I think it would give Rangers the best template with the ball. And I think that's ultimately what's going to decide a manager's success, how they move the ball all over the team. And I think that starts with the defence. They have so much of the ball in these types of games, even if Hibs, you'd imagine, will come out and attack a bit tomorrow. So that's my back four. I'd like to see. I don't know what it will be. What about you, especially in those kind of left-sided positions?
I think that left-sided one, that's the only position that's up for debate, I think, to be honest, Josh. I know the manager referenced, or I was asked about Tavernier as captain the other day there. I know people were a bit upset, or some were upset by his answer, saying that Tav will retain an armband. I don't think we're ever going to see anything different. So Tav starts, he plays, he's the captain. I think we might see a centre-half. It'll be the same blueprint almost that Michael Beale had. He decided once he could that Goldson and Davies were going to be the two that he was going to pick. I would be surprised if it's anything other than that. And as you mentioned and outlined there, Josh, I think the only thing is at left back now. Do you go for Barisic, or do you go for someone in Yilmaz who I think we're all waiting to see? I think we all like the idea of Yilmaz, and we all know the fee that's been spent, and we all want that fee to be repaid. And I think he's quite a likeable player. Also, he scored that great goal a few weeks ago that showed what he can do going forward. It's just whether he can do it often enough. And I do wonder if the manager needs this run of results, needs this run of performances going forward. If he just has to almost pick the one who's going to play more often than not, that's going to be Barisic. He is more robust. He's also in the European squad, and Ridvan's not. So that then has an implication on Thursday night. I do wonder if I will just say that's the back four that I'm going to pick. Whether it's the best one, whether it fits and suits the style longer term, if you'll just say that's the back four, that's what this team is going to be built around, and that's what it's going to be. That may well be harsh on Ridvan, but I do wonder if there's a bigger issue at play, and the manager just sees the bigger picture and then goes with Barisic, who is just a bit more robust, and you're going to get a certain level of performance out of him, but more importantly, you're going to get the games out of him, and it just does give Rangers that foundation going forward.
Yeah, comment here from, where is it, CGM55, saying no chance Clement will go three at the back, and I think that is a possibility. My slight drawback on that point is do Rangers have the depth in that position to make it their kind of set position behind Davies, Suter and Goldson? Where I do like that idea, Chris, I'd like that idea more if they played like an asymmetrical shape where they had maybe a winger on one of the sides. I think Rangers did it against Morton. Was it Morton? When Matondo actually had quite a good game from the start. And he was effectively just pinned to the touchline. And although he was technically playing a wing-back position, he wasn't really, because, you're playing the game in the opposition's half. And it just allows you to have that varying kind of threat on the left-hand side. I don't like the thought of a back three if it's Tavernier and Barisic wide. Even if that means they're providing width, because I think it would just lead to a propensity to cross the ball too much. And listen, maybe that's where you'll go at the start, because look at where this squad is built. It's built to have a lot of players, attacking players in the centre, with coming from fullbacks. It's not got a lot of depth. It's not got many wingers per se. It's got probably one winger, one out-and-out winger in Rabi Matondo. And it's got a lot of central strikers. If you look at Roof, Dessers, Danilo, Lammers, Lawrence, Cantwell, we could go on. So I think that obviously, from what we've learned about Clement, a lot of consideration will be given to what he does have. The back three, to me, I think it can work, and obviously I think there's a tendency to think that's definitely going to be more defensive. If you've got someone like Davies and Suter, I think they're actually better at breaking lines than some of Rangers midfielders. Suter's the way that he can carry the ball through pressure, Davies with that left foot. But I think the question would be what happens around them and ahead of them, because, again, to reiterate, for me, if it's a case of, okay, maybe you put a winger on one side and you have Tavernier high on the other side with a couple other options alongside him, and it is an actual back three, good. But as we saw, I think it was the Motherwell game, the second half, it quickly became a back five that Rangers were playing, fell into a flat line, and that didn't work on that day. I don't think anyone would like to see a repeat of that.
No, as I say, that's always the risk with it. And I think especially at Ibrox, that's a risk when people just drop deeper and deeper in the crowd, then get more and more upset, and that that afternoon against Motherwell was not good. It was not how Rangers should be. It should be lining up against anyone at Ibrox, let alone Motherwell, with all respect to them. So I think that's always the danger of that setup. I don't mind it in theory, but I think we need to see it more in practice to determine if it is going to be the ideal way forward for Rangers. I would be surprised if it happens tomorrow, but who knows? It's as you mentioned earlier on, it's a white sheet of paper, as the manager said there. So everything is probably on the table.
Midfield, a lot of this type of comment start Bailey Rice. I think there's a tendency, and I'm probably guilty of this sometimes as well, thinking, oh, players are young, it's very intense here, give them time. But I guess Clement will probably go along with the lines of, well, if they're good enough, they're old enough. All around Europe, you see players breaking at 17, 16, 18 to big clubs. No reason that can't be here, Chris. And there's no reason that someone like Bailey Rice, who I think everyone's been impressed with him so far. Michael Beale made that comment about introducing him to the madhouse slowly, but there's not an abundance of options in that central midfield position. We don't know what the case is with Ryan Jack until today's press conference. I think Nico Raskin is a player, an interesting player we can come on to talk about. How does Clement get the best out of him? What is his best position? But I guess just starting with that topic, Bailey Rice, could you see this being a moment where he breaks through into the team? Is he too young, or is it just a case of, well, not sink or swim so much, but you've got to take your opportunity when it comes to you, and so far there's nothing to suggest that you wouldn't be ready for that?
I think it's the old, if you're good enough, you're old enough. I see someone in the comments there mentioned Big DJ, but time has moved on since he was scoring headers at 16 years old. But the theory is still the same. If you are a young player and a manager comes in, it does just give you that fresh opportunity. It is just that chance of, well, now could be my moment. I don't think his age should really come into it. It's not as if you're pitching someone in who's like 15, 16 and has had very little first team involvement. He's been around that first team squad for a long time now. He'll know the players in that squad. He'll know their personalities. He'll know the style of play. And I would hope that he is someone that really can get his chance over the next few weeks. You asked me if my team earlier on, and I put Lundstrom in there because I think Lundstrom's probably the safer option. It's probably the one that the manager will go with. But if he did go for Bailey Rice, then great, fair play to him. Now, what a signal of intent. I think that then sends a message to the more established players in the squad that, look, your jerseys are not guaranteed here. And what a show of faith in Rice and perhaps some of the other academy kids. We've also seen Lovely's come in and show up well against St Mirren. McCausland came on and did well against St Mirren. And these guys who are perhaps on the fringes, it is now a chance to say, well, there's jerseys up for grabs here. And I don't think just because they've not played a lot of first-team football or they're only 17, 18 years old, as you say, players in other leagues and other established teams play at that age. It's not a case of you have to wait until you're 20, 21 to get a shot at Rangers, because if you're not getting your chance until that age, you're probably not good enough and you're probably not going to make it. The very best ones, the ones that are going to make it at Rangers, are involved in the first team at 17. They're playing first team football regularly at 18, because if they're not, they're probably not at the standard. So I'd be surprised if it was Rice, but I'd also be pleased if it was, because I think it would be a real kind of signal of intent from the manager. And he did mention giving the youth a chance. And he spoke on Tuesday. Now, it may be through necessity, just because of options, but the players have to get their shot, have to get their breakthrough somewhere. And if this is the moment that it turns into be the kind of foundation for Bailey Rice's Rangers career, then great.
I quite like the balance of Rice playing alongside Raskin, because as a comment comes in and says here, I don't think Raskin is a six, more of a box-to-box type, and probably agree with that. I don't think he's a player who, when I did a piece with his former manager, I can't remember the exact quote he used, but it was something like, almost like he needs to be involved. Like, he's not someone who's just going to sit. And you see that with the way he presses the ball. But I think that's the same on the ball as well. Sometimes I think when he plays at the base midfield, he can rush things. And I don't think that's to say that he can't mature into a really good player in that position, because I think it's better to have that quality as well, to be willing to take a risk at points, especially when you're playing for someone like Rangers. But I do like the balance of Rice and Raskin in there. I think he's going to have to be box clever in how he sets his team up, because it's not like he's coming into a squad where he's got, you've got two wingers here, who can provide your width, and you can work around that. It might be a case of, okay, on the right, Tavernier is going to be your widest player, and then you're going to have Cifuentes and someone else next to him, and it'll be a case of rotating positions that he's spoken about quite a lot to give you different options. Whereas on the left, it might be, I'm hopeful that when Rabi Matondo comes back, he might be someone that can, I guess, continue what he was showing before he got injured, Chris, but then make that jump to become a starter as well, week in, week out. Because I think he looks like a different player this season. He looks like he's playing with a lot more confidence. I don't think it's ever been a question of has he got quality. I think it's been a question of can he show it in this league. Does he have the confidence to show it? Again, to go back to a piece I've done at one point with his former manager, I can't remember the quote he used, but effectively he said he's the biggest confidence player you've ever met. He just needs confidence to go and show what he's about. And perfect example was the game at Ross County last year when he went through one-on-one and I can't even remember what he did, if he tried to lift it over the goalkeeper or go round him. But and Michael Beale said after he's having a crisis of confidence this season, whether it be the PSV game, whether it be his appearances from the bench. I think he's shown more what he can do in space. But I'm interested to see how that can translate to starting games. And I think it's a bit of a myth that if a player's fast, they can't play against a low block. I think you need it more and more. It's just about how you get them the ball, where they get the ball, if they're clever enough to know that they're going to maybe drift in and out of the game at points. Because I think we've seen enough, Chris, to suggest that if he's given a run of games in the team, if he's got a role and players around him that can work really well, let's say hypothetically he's playing with Ridvan on the left-hand side and maybe you've got someone like Rice at the base of that triangle, or you've got Cantwell at the number 10. I could see Rabi Matondo having a good spell starting games for Rangers. What about you? You're going to shoot me down and tell me that I'm being too optimistic?
If you'd asked me 7-8 weeks ago, I would have probably shot you down. But his form has silenced his critics, including me. So I'm amazed that we're having this conversation. I saw nothing from him at all last season to think that he was going to be a Rangers player. I was sure that he'd be one of the ones that would be part of the moving on in the summer. But as you outlined there, Josh, he's been on this curve of up and up and providing goals and scoring goals and just looking a bit more like the kind of player that Rangers would spend that sort of fee on. I think how the manager sets Rangers up middle to front is going to be really interesting. Now, does he try and be quite narrow like Michael Beale was? Does he go for pacey options and have like Sima on one side, maybe and Matondo on the other? He's not short of options because the squad has been built with a lot of. Now we can debate the quality of some of them, but there's a lot of players in that middle to front area of the side, and that then does lead to a number of different ways that the side can be set up. Personally, I'd like to see a bit more pace in the side because I mentioned earlier on it's been boring to watch at times, and it's been too lacklustre to watch, and that's then allowed opposition sides, especially at Ibrox, just to regain their shape and to sit in, and all the problems of breaking down those defensive minded sides. If you're slow and you're laborious in possession, you just those problems then just snowball. You have to have a bit more intent about you, and having someone with Matondo's pace, even if he doesn't always have the quality on the ball. John just made the point I was going to make there. His pace will cause defenders problems. If you're a fullback and you know that the guy in front of you has the beating of you every single time, whether he's got the ball at his feet or whether it's knocked over the top, if you know that he's going to beat you to it, that then puts serious doubts in your mind. And hopefully we will see Matondo, I say perhaps Sima on the other side. They can occupy defenders in different ways. Then maybe opens up other spaces for the likes of Cantwell, for Lawrence if he's on the side. Hopefully we can see the best of Danilo. Having them in the side, it might not always be the most effective, but it could open up other avenues for other players in the side to actually have hopefully a greater impact in that final third.
Yeah, listen, there's loads of players to get into. I think we'll have more of an idea after tomorrow, after today's press conference. We'll know who's not going to play because of injuries, but I think we'll have a better idea tomorrow of maybe where players fit in. How does he plan to get more out of a player like Lammers? That's my dog unhappy because he's wants his walk, Chris, and I've not given him one yet. So apologies about that. How does he get the best out of someone like Lammers? Is he going to play him as a number 10? Is he going to play him off the right-hand side with Tavernier and Cifuentes, as we saw against, I think it was Livingston at home? One player that we wrote about on the website yesterday, Abdullah Sima, he's actually got the highest of players that have played more than 300 minutes, highest expected goals per 90. touches in the opposition box and expected goals per shot. Only it's a small sample size, but I think you've started to see that he's not a winger for me. He's a wide forward. He looks much more confident in the ball, looks much more confident when he's carrying the ball at the moment. But he's one player that I think probably definitely starts tomorrow because he's in form. And I think there's questions about how you fit him into the team, because if you're playing him on the left with Barisic, that's not a left-hand side you're going to be able to, I think, build play down a lot or provide lots of different options, because for their qualities, they have limitations as well. But I don't think there's any doubt that at the moment he's probably Rangers' most informed forward, and maybe even if he doesn't play as that main number 9 tomorrow, I think there's got to be a spot for him tomorrow, doesn't there?
I think he definitely has to play, but as you outlined, Josh, it's how do you fit him in the team going forward? Because if you have Roof fit and available and you have Danilo fit and available, I think most people, when they're rhyming off their teams, would say, right, those two play, and then becomes a case of, right, now where do we then put Seaman? You're probably not going to play him as a touchline hugging wide man. You want to play him slightly more central. That then opens up. I say, where does Roof then play, and where does Danilo then play? So I think that's a welcome problem to have. I think if you're Lammers, or certainly if you're Cyril Dessers, it probably doesn't bode very well for you. Seeing Danilo come back, seeing Roof available, and seeing Seema in form, it's then hard to see where these guys get in the side. But on form, Seema is one that just has to play. Been really impressed with him the last few weeks. Now we talk about numbers, we talk about output. This is a guy who's got it. I think Johnny made the point. So yesterday morning I was on with him, saying he's basically just fashion Sakala, and there is that kind of comparison of someone who's slightly erratic, slightly raw, but does score goals. I think Seema's got a bit more quality about him than Sakala, and he's certainly proven to be a shrewd signing so far. Again, as I said yesterday, it sums up Rangers' luck at the minute, that one of the more impressive summer recruits is the one they've not went and spent £7 million on. But what can you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that obviously he's kind of taken Sakala's place in the team, but I think Sakala was very much someone who he wanted to receive the ball deep and drive at opponents. For all Sakala's pace, I can't think of a single goal or many goals where it was actually him running in behind or timing his run, because it was always offside, caught offside. But where Seema uses, I think he's more wants to run onto the ball. As you say, he's not someone who's going to receive and drive past 3 or 4 players. If you think of Sakala on the final day of last season against St Mirren, where he gets the ball wide, and he scored 2 very similar goals, and he's just got the power to push inside and shoot from those locations. That's where he's at his most effective. Seema, I think's a bit different. But before we close, Chris, I want to talk, firstly, thanks to David, who has given a gift to the channel and says, hopefully the game actually goes ahead with the weather. Absolutely. That's a fair point, David. Todd Cantwell, want to speak quickly about where he should play. Also, a lot of conversation about his, I don't know if you caught his podcast the other day with the Beautiful Game podcast. Would recommend people listen to it. It's a really good listen. Some comments as well about his social media activity. I mean, I don't know about you, Chris, but I think that the podcast for me was a brilliant insight, and it's good to see a footballer talk like that and be open enough. I don't think you can have it both ways. Footballers are they're people, as he describes in that podcast. They have stuff going on off the pitch as well. I think that Cantwell is obviously someone who's Rangers fans have taken to their hearts so quickly, and it just kind of got it really early on. I think, like any Rangers player, he needs to obviously win trophies before he, I guess, really establishes his legacy at the club. But my opinion on it is that on social media use, on podcasts like that, you don't want players to be robots. You want them to have personality and be able to express themselves and say what they think. And I thought it was a brilliant listen with lots of good insight. So I guess before we move on to his position, what do you think about that whole that whole thing? And did you listen to the podcast? What do you make of that kind of aspect of footballers speaking like that?
I think in general, it's a good thing. We've all sat in enough press conferences and been treated to player interviews. I use treated in a certain way there. Been treated to player interviews that are just cliches and they're boring, and it's one game at a time. And I don't think they then don't present the player in the best way. As I say, all the players in the squad, they've got their own personalities, they've got their own quirks, they've got their own views on team and world events and all that type of thing. And I think it was good to see Cantwell offer that bit of insight into some of the struggles that he's had and his journey in the game. That type of thing should be embraced. And if players were able to do that in our press conferences or in one-to-one interviews that we're lucky to get, if they could do that more often, it'd be great, because they give more of a flavour of the person. They give a bit more insight into their journey in the game. The stuff on Chris Sutton, personally, I'd like to see him park it and leave it, because it does him no favours. It plays into Sutton's hands, much like Michael Beale did when he held that presser at New Edmiston House last year, and I think it was labelled him the worst striker in Chelsea's history. For us, it's a great line, and people want to read it, and it's good for social media, great for newspapers and for websites and for broadcasters. It does him no favours though, because you're playing into Chris Sutton's hands, and the obvious riposte is, do your talking on the pitch. Well, Rangers are not winning trophies. They have to be careful about what they say. There's also, I think, fans can't have it both ways, because a lot of the stuff, like when Cantwell posts or other players post after scoring a goal or the Old Firm win or build up to big games, fans enjoy that interaction. They like seeing the behind the scenes stuff. They like seeing them doing work in the gym or a bit of insight. If they then post a picture of scoring goals, fans also respond to that. So you can't say we like all of that, but by the way, you got beat, let's not say anything. So I think there's a fine line. Cantwell, I think, is on that fine line sometimes. I'm a fan of him using social media as long as it's used in the right way.
Yeah, no, fair enough. But would recommend, if anyone's not listened to it, would recommend you listen to it, because it's a really good listen, some really good insight as well into his favourite position, which we're going to finish on, Chris. I think sometimes the whole Cantwell position thing's blown out of proportion. My view is always that he needs to be at the centre of the team. Sometimes that will change. If you've got a team that's playing, for example, let's say you've got a team that's playing that is actually camping in their own box, their own third at Ibrox. I don't think you always want Cantwell ahead of the balls. I think you want him on the ball where he can get in front of things. And without Rangers having that kind of number 6 who's really going to dictate play and open teams up, sometimes you need a creative player to maybe drop down a line and be the one that plays that pass before going and joining the attack. When the game is end-to-end, Servette away is a perfect example for me of this. I think you do want Cantwell as your most advanced, free, creative player, and number 10, who has a little bit less defensive responsibility, who can run beyond, who can pick the ball up wherever he wants. I think when he is fit, he's Rangers' best player. Remains to be seen if Clement is going to play number 10. But coming back from this injury now, having, like, I guess Raskin had a kind of up and down start to the season along with the rest of the squad, now time for him to put that into action. But I guess, do you agree with me on that point? And if Clement doesn't play a number 10 position tomorrow, I guess Cantwell has to be that most advanced player of the midfield three, doesn't he?
Just quickly, Josh, see a number of comments coming in asking about the presser. It's 1 o'clock today for Jo Potter. She's speaking ahead of the women's game against Celtic. 1:30 for the manager and 2 o'clock for the presser. So we'll also have all that. I'm heading up to the training ground just shortly, so we'll have all that covered later on. On Cantwell, I think you summed it up well there, Josh. You want him on the ball as often and as many times as possible. A game that sees Todd Cantwell have the most touches of any Rangers player is more likely to be a game that Rangers win. He is the most attacking player. He's the most creative player. He's the one that's got that guile. He's the one that can pick a pass. I would like to see him score more goals. He had that run towards the end of last season. We chipped him with a couple. I'd like to see him score more. But I think the way of getting the best out of him is just to give him the ball. So if that means that he has to drop deeper at times and then try and make things happen from there, fine. If it means that he's getting up and he's getting beyond the striker, fine. I think there has to be that kind of freedom almost. It's not a case of you give him one particular role in a team, he stays in that area of the pitch, and that's the only way he's going to hurt teams. I think if you allow him to drop into different areas, to pop up in different areas, I think that's going to be the best way to get the best out of him. Sorry. So hopefully he's back fit. Hopefully he's over the injury that he has. I think he's certainly been missed. And I'll be really interested to see how the manager attempts to use him. Does he have him as part of a structure, middle to front? Or does he say, look, the structure will be around about you, and we'll drill certain areas off the side, we'll build partnerships, we'll build phases of play around about you, just you almost go and do whatever you like. That's not to say you be reckless with it, that's not to say you be silly with it. But I think if you have someone who has that quality, who has that vision, who can see things that other players in the team can't see, it'd be silly to try and restrict them.
Yeah, I just finally too. I thought another interesting thing that came out of that podcast was, Cantwell speaking about the free role that Beale gave him. I don't think it's any coincidence that the time that Beale's football kind of fell apart a bit, because I know people will say there was never any style of play, but I think last season you could clearly see what he was trying to do. He didn't get over the line in big games, and in hindsight, he wasn't able to do that this season. So, that's a fair criticism, but I don't think it's any coincidence that when you didn't have Cantwell either in form or, he didn't start the game against Kilmarnock away, he started the Old Firm game in like a deep position on the right, and it wasn't even about getting him on the ball. It was just I know he played that when he first came into the club, but there's points in that second half in that Old Firm game where he was much deeper than Ryan Jack, and it just the balance didn't feel right. So I personally don't think it's any coincidence that Beale's football was built around, I think, giving players like him or Tillman last season creative freedom, but then the kind of autonomy, as you say, to run the game, to be the one that's unpredictable. It was Ryan Kent at points last season as well. If you think to the game away at Rugby Park, or I think Easter Road as well is the one that comes to mind. So yeah, interesting insight into that as well. But we could go on all day, Chris. You've got a press conference to get to. For the members, we'll be live later on today, myself and Chris, for just a short while after the press conference. You can join the YouTube members on the YouTube page if you have not done so already. Remember to subscribe to the website. Loads of coverage there over the past couple of weeks. There's going to be a lot more as well as we look ahead to what Clement is doing, what he's changing. Hopefully we'll have a positive result on Saturday to reflect on. Until then, thanks very much for joining us. Chris will be live at the press conference soon, so stay tuned to our social channels for that, and we'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.